Hey guys. So I'm thinking about doing a new, kind of a vlog-ish thing. Not really a vlog. It's more just me talking about just whatever I'm working on or whatever I'm feeling at the moment, I guess. The past couple weeks, I've pretty much just been working on recording a new album EP thing. I don't want to give away too much about that, but there is actual music in the works. It's interesting coming from doing a bunch of Instagram stuff to now I'm purposely slowing down with that and focusing on writing things longer than a minute. It's good, you know. When you get stuck in the Instagram thing, it's great for marketing and for getting better at specific small things, but it definitely doesn't help with bigger project stuff. So even though it's helped me a ton with finding my improv sound and for production stuff, I still do have to practice writing full songs because it's just a different thing, right? I thought it could be interesting to talk about maybe what it's like writing complex instrumental prog music, which is the most specific genre that you can possibly imagine. You fight the thing of do you write the music knowing what other people are gonna like, or do you write it more what you like and kind of what your vision is? I mean, of course you want to do the second one 99% of the time, but it still is in your head because you're still you want people to enjoy it, right? I don't want to write an album and then I'm the only one who likes it, right? So I'm kind of struggling with where to make compromises and where to keep stuff more true to my vision. This is almost the hard part about writing music by yourself, is there's no one to check back and forth with. So if you think a part is cool, there's no bandmate to tell you, oh no, it's actually really dumb. You have to just kind of think it's cool and then not second guess yourself. About writing this kind of music is that there really aren't any rules, really. Because it's mainly music for musicians, we like hearing a bunch of different influences and pulling stuff from a million different genres. There's some parts where they're really heavy metal influenced and other parts where it's more jazz influenced or even pop influenced. So it gives it, you can do whatever you want in any genre, but I feel like prog really gives you permission to try things that are maybe weird and that you wouldn't normally put in any other kind of song, but maybe you have this weird vision for a metal pop country album, and you can do it and people won't really second guess you. Something I've really been messing with these last songs that I've been writing is more synth, soundscape stuff, where there's just long synth passages with just a lot of textures and arpeggiators and all these weird analog synth things happening, where normally in other kinds of music, in more popular music, usually they don't add those parts to songs because a lot of listeners maybe will get bored and they'll just skip to the next song. But with prog music and stuff, there's never really super catchy hooks, so you kind of have to sit back and take in all the music. Like an album that really influenced me a ton that I've been thinking about a lot recently is Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. And that's an album that I've listened to all the way through in like the songs in order. I mean, hundreds of times probably. The way each song leads to the next, and they're not afraid to put weird interludes, and they're not afraid to have these parts in there that like these long extended texture synth stuff happening. I feel like a lot of music nowadays has lost that, where there's almost like an ADHD to it, where oh, we need the hook, and then there's the chorus, and then there's no time for there's no time for a part where we can slow down and build up again. We have to move on to the next part. Let's get back to the chorus, which I do like pop music a lot, but I feel that's frustrates me sometimes, especially when I go back and listen to stuff from like the 70s. I feel like in the 70s and stuff, pop music was more an artist creating songs, when a lot of stuff nowadays, especially the super popular stuff, it feels more like a committee making songs, or like maybe the artist is making the songs, but then still the label is like, oh, let's cut it down, let's make it like 2 minutes, and let's really try to condense it into something that could be played on the radio a million times. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that. I like stuff where you can feel the artist. It's the artist's vision, not someone telling the artist what to do. I think the other interesting thing about prog is that it's very technique focused for a lot of people. I fall into that category. It's hard to get away from it sometimes, right? Especially when everything you post on Instagram is all technique focused, and like, there is an aspect of melodic stuff happening, but like most of the people on Instagram, you only get 1 minute, right? So it's a lot of showing off and like, oh look, I can hybrid pick fast, or I can thump. But anyways, so I've been writing these songs. And then compared to my other stuff, now I have new gear to experiment with and get new sounds that I couldn't get on the other stuff. Like now I have the Abasi Concepts Larada, which is 8 strings. So I've been using that on pretty much everything. I feel like sometimes I have to force myself to write songs. Like my default state is not super creative, and I'm always writing a bunch of music and that kind of thing. My default state is more practicing patterns and practicing improvising and like messing with different intervals, like that kind of stuff. So to get into a writing mood, or a writing mindset, I kind of have to force it. And then once I get in that mindset, I kind of have to just write as much as I can, and then see how it all turns out. Maybe combine stuff together, or take a part that I think has potential and adjusting it and tweaking it, that kind of thing. Something else that's been inspiring me a lot recently has been using an analog synth. So I have a Behringer Model D synthesizer, which is modeled after a Moog. It's great. It's a very different thing than using a synth plugin. Even though they can sound the same, and I mean they're really controlled exactly the same, especially if you have like one of the Moog like emulation plugins where it's laid out exactly the same and everything sounds the same. So it's not so much different in terms of sounds, but it's more like actually physically interacting with the synthesizer. And you're doing automation stuff with the actual hardware. Like I'll set up MIDI in Logic, and then I'll send the MIDI to the synth and then record the audio coming out of the synth. So while maybe I put like an arpeggio thing happening throughout a whole section, I'll be I'll have my hands on the synth the whole time and slowly building or like doing filter sweeps all by hand, which gives you a kind of control. It's a feel thing. You know, you can do that in Logic with automation, just drawing lines, but it's very uninspiring, and which is why I most of the time don't even do it. So if I'm in Logic, I just won't bother with synth automation because I don't know, I'm not motivated to do it. But when I'm recording the analog synth, it's all right there, so it's super easy. Not that it's hard in Logic, but it's just, it would be almost dumb for me not to do it because it's literally right in front of me and I just have to turn a couple knobs. So I think using the synth it's given me sounds that I wouldn't have normally done, even with the synth plugin that's modeled after the synth I'm actually using. Sometimes I wonder if I feel the same way about amps, because for the past maybe year and a half, I haven't recorded with the real amp. It's all been plugins and Axe effects and that kind of thing, which I honestly love. The thing that I'm hesitant to get into the amp world because I don't want to invest like $5,000 to have 3 different sounds, which even I think that's kind of lowballing it, because you'd have to buy 3 separate heads or 3 separate amps and then you can either buy a cabinet and mic up the cabinet, which is going to be a ton of money because, you know, probably want to get some kind of ribbon mic and some kind of dynamic mic, and then the cab, however much that costs. And then also it's so, if you want to get the best tone, you have to play so loud that it's just, I don't want to do that. So you could also go the route of having real amp heads and then running them into some kind of cabinet simulations or like into some kind of IR, like a load box kind of thing, which I think that would be, if I was going to get real amps, that would be the route I would go. But I think right now I just don't have a reason to. And like, I've played through a real amp recently. I plugged in my my Fender Vibrolux recently, and I just wasn't inspired by it in the same way that I sometimes am with modelers and stuff. I feel like with modelers, there's so many options and you can just scroll through amp models, which is great. So I'm trying a bunch of amps that I've never played in real life, which is now making me want to go back and try those amps in real life. So like, I've been using a 5150 amp in my Axe effects for probably a good year, and I've never played the real amp, but I love how the model sounds in the Axe effects. I use it for a bunch of like dark fusion lead sounds. It's different. I've never been a person who was into amp modeling until recently. So now it's crazy that I prefer it over real amps right now.